Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And I was going through a few articles. I came across some here on RT News as well as Zero Hedge. Now, the one I really want to focus on in this video is the one from zerohedge.com, and it states UK's largest supermarket begins rationing cooking oil amid supply disruption. Now, before you think, oh yeah, damn, that's crazy, but hey, it's cooking oil, right? This is, you got to look at the bigger picture here. All right, because today is cooking oil, but then what will it be tomorrow? And this is the concern that people deal with in the engineering, all right, of a man-made famine in a food crisis, okay? Because food is the last thing you want to play with. And the reason is there's a lot of other things out there that people can do without. But when it comes to food, that's when you have those riots and those, the real heavy turmoil. And eventually people get to the breaking point where they just submit. Okay, so food is definitely going to be or play a great role, a great factor when it comes to getting control, causing chaos, but also getting people to submit. Why do you think in the ancient world, or, just in war, the tactic of siege, all right, besieging is constantly used? Why do you think it was used over and over and over again? If it wasn't effective, it would have been abandoned. But if it's been used over and over again because it is an effective method. And during a siege, you cut off anything, any supplies, anybody, anything. You pretty much cut off this particular territory from the outside world. Nobody goes in, nobody comes out, no products, nothing goes in, nothing comes out. And a siege really takes patience because the nation that's besieging the other nation is waiting for the other nation eventually to run out of food and supply within their walls, and eventually they would submit, or they'd get weak enough to where the outside nation can come in and conquer them, right? So what we're seeing here today is a modern day siege, but this is on the world. And it is also another factor that will be used to cause or gain submission. All right. The only thing is, in this sense, the way they've disguised it, you might not look at it or see it directly as a siege, but it is. All right. And the scriptures, the Yahweh Shai, the Messiah, prophesied of pestilence and famines and earthquakes in diverse places. And what we're seeing is these are different crises that these elites take advantage of and use in order to further push their agenda, because a heavy part on the success of their plans is based on how well they can get people to break and to submit. All right. In order to cause all, both small and great, to submit to your agenda, you need to be able to break them. You need to be able to gain, these people. And the best way to control somebody is really through fear. All right. It's really through fear. As they say, fear lasts longer than love. All right. When you look at two relationships, you have the one that fears the other, or one that loves the other. In most cases, the one that fears the other, that relationship, quote unquote, lasts longer. That's why the Most High first demands fear, the fear of the Lord. All right. That's the beginning. But yeah, let's see. So it says here, if record food prices weren't enough. Now, this isn't something new. All right. This definitely is not something new. There's been warnings and warnings and warnings that we've been sending out, as well as, truthers and people in the so-called truther community that have been warning for years. Okay. Years, not months, years, about the slow but sure disruption of the food supply. And the thing is, it takes a while to get this thing going. And because of that, it's not a one-day fix. Okay? When you destroy the food supply chain, it's to repair that and set it back on course. It's not a one-day fix. The only problem is it takes a while to fix it, right? But people don't have that while that it takes as they're starving to death. And eventually they start, you're going to have people that will resort to cannibalism. And a good example is in a movie called The Road. Because people will become ruthless. They will become more primitive in mindset and less rational in thought. And because of that, they will start in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter. It talks about how the course of their actions shall stand in their power, meaning whatever they're gonna do, they're gonna do it, regardless of what rules, laws, and regulations there are over there. And a lot of people are gonna have the mentality of every man for themselves. All right, even down to family, even down to so-called loved ones, where you may have an individual that's with you. Maybe you're a woman and you got a man, but he might not be a man of the Lord. And he's with you and he's doing all this and that for you. Yes, so long as there's enough for both of you. And then what happens when it's just enough for one of you? Is he going to sacrifice that for you? Or is he going to sacrifice you for that? And that's something that a lot of people don't. These are scenarios that average people do not play in their minds because they don't ever think this is something that can happen. So what happens to an individual that is put in a scenario that they never, ever, ever thought would happen to them? Then they have absolutely no clue how to move, how to behave, because they've never once thought about it. So it's not going to be an answer of I don't know. It's going to be an I don't know manifest in their actions. Okay, combined with primed and desensitized Americans who've been, trained and taught not to work or do anything for themselves, but to just receive everything, just being spoon-fed. Yeah, it's going to be a total recipe for disaster. And yet, till this day, you still have people, particularly Israelites, that are roaming about as if there is nothing going on in the world at all. Absolutely nothing. But eventually, they're going to start caring, because eventually it will hit home and it will hit hard. It says if record high food prices weren't enough, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has choked off the world of sunflower oil supply, forcing the largest supermarket in the UK to begin rationing. And we mentioned this, that the demic, right, that we were just in, which, we're quote unquote still in, but then we're not, but then we are, that kind of thing. Yeah, that was used. That was a phase one. And it did its part. Now, whether they're going to bring it back and utilize it in another way, or hey, we'd have to watch and see. But now the new boogeyman is Russia and Ukraine. The new boogeyman is Putin. We are going to destroy the world economies. We are going to starve the populations of the world till they submit to us. And we're going to say it's Putin's fault. You don't have sunflower oil? Putin's fault. Inflation is going up? Putin's fault. You mean the same inflation that was going up before the Russia-Ukraine conflict? Yeah, that same inflation, but it's still Putin's fault. All right? High prices? Putin's fault. So when you start seeing food riots, it's Putin's fault. Everything is Putin's fault. And everybody sits there and takes that as, yes, okay. They don't wonder, well, okay, it's his fault, but what are we going to do about it? No. It's Putin's fault. And that's the solution. That's the key to it all. Until you're starving to death, then Putin's fault is no longer a sufficient answer. It says, forcing the largest supermarket in the UK to begin rationing. That's not a good sign. The Guardian reports that Tesco, with more than 4,000 retail stores, placed buying limits of 3 cooking oil bottles per customer. It follows Waitrose and Morrison's, other supermarket chains that set limits of just 2 per customer. And you're going to start seeing more empty shelves, because what happens when people start to see restrictions, rationings, then you have hoard buying, right? Or food hoarding, where they go and buy in excess amounts in fear that they will come there and not get any more. So buy it all now while you can. And that is what that feeds into and promotes shortages even more. It says the UK's biggest retailer is experiencing sourcing issues with cooking oil, especially sunflower oil, which much of it comes from Ukraine. As retailers panic about sourcing edible oils, it has driven retail cooking oil prices up an average of 20% over the last year. And for people that look at these numbers as, oh, that's 1%, oh, that's 3%, oh, that's 20%. Guess what? 1% of a very, 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 very large group or population is a very big number. Okay. It says here, last week, British retail consortium's Tom Holder told the BBC that rationing was temporary to ensure availability for everyone. And that right there is called damage control. You can look that up. And it's a tactic that's used to reduce, avoid, or slow down panic. Because when people hear that the largest retail store, in terms of, let me see, how did it word it? All right. Yeah, one of its largest retail stores is rationing cooking oil. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to rush to try and get as much as they can. And, everybody's going to fall into that trend. So when they come and say, oh, it's only temporary, all right, so that everybody can get some, that temporary is what allows them to. Matter of fact, I'm just going to give you a better example. Instead of me explaining it, let me give you a flashback to 2020. All right. And what were we told, especially here in New York, but in other places as well? What were we told? 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks is what started off as the temporary. We're going to put things down on lock, right, for 2 weeks. And it's only a temporary thing. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks turned into 2 months, turned into 2 years. So that temporary is a very, interesting thing you have to keep an eye on whenever they throw that out there. Okay, temporary is just to calm you down. All right. But temporary, how long is temporary? They don't tell you that. They just tell you temporary. Because temporary is really as long as they need. All right. If temporary is 3 years, then temporary is 3 years. But because we're so used to hearing temporary and associating it with a short time span or something that's not permanent, it'll calm you down a bit. All right. Well, let's see if you survive through that temporary, even if it's a temporary famine, because if you look in history, famines have really been temporary because they come and they pass. They don't last forever. But yet in that time, you go back in time to those Egyptians, all right, or the people dwelling in that land during Joseph's time when there was a famine, and go tell them, yeah, don't worry about getting corn from Egypt. The famine is temporary. Don't worry about it. All right. 7 years was temporary. But you try going 7 years without eating because it's only temporary. See how well temporarily, does you. But it says here, to ensure availability for everyone, he said supermarkets are working with suppliers to ramp up production of alternative cooking oils to minimize the impact on consumers. Yeah, but that's just something they say. Listen, these markets, they don't, if they minimize, right, in whatever tactics they have to use, minimize impact on consumers, who then has to pay for that? When prices go up in order for them to get these products or materials that they sell, you think they're gonna cover for it so you can keep paying for cheap? No, sir. They pass on that tax or that price hike onto the consumers by raising prices. All right. So businesses care about making money off you. Businesses don't care about how your pockets looking. If that was the case, if you went to the store and you wanted to buy something that was worth $10 and you only had $9, they would say, "Oh, don't worry. If your pocket's only got 9, I'll take that." But what did they tell you? Well, I'm sorry. It costs $10. Shows you how much they care for you. But according to Tom Holder, right, that this is all in the best interest of the consumer. Tesco said in a statement, "We have good availability of cooking oils in stores and online. If a customer is unable to find the preferred oil, we have plenty of alternatives to choose from. To make sure all of our customers can continue to get what they need, we've introduced a temporary buying limit of 3 items per customer on products from our cooking oil range." You hear that? And it's all how you say it, how you word it. So you say it almost nonchalantly. And what does that do? That doesn't raise the alarms in people's minds, right? But if people who are learned that they know what this means, they know how to decipher the way these people talk, they know exactly what's going on. But for the others, it's just, oh, okay, all right, yeah. I mean, when I need it, I guess I'll go, and if they don't have it, I'll get alternatives. Okay, and what happens if the alternatives are not in stock? And this is not in stock. And now is okay, you can place a limit on 3 per customer, but then when it gets worse and you run out, then what? It says supermarkets are also placing buying restrictions on olive and rapeseed oils. There was news Friday that the world's largest palm oil producer, Indonesia, announced an export ban of all cooking oil and palm oil products, which adds even more tightness to global cooking oil supplies. And the thing about this is, because you have the world economies, because they're so interconnected and interconnected, because there are different countries that specialize in different things that they can export out, and that can be more profit for them. They may export something that they have more of in their land, and you may export something you have more of in your land. So they'll import what you got and give you what they got. Right? It's a trade. Okay. Now, the thing about that is, now you become dependent on this other country, but you're not the only one depending on that country, because if this country is the number one producer of this product, then everybody's going to look and say, "Hey, I can export this to you, and then you give me this." Right? So they are the supplier. And then what happens when the supplier closes his doors and says, "I'm not supplying anymore"? Then what? Then nobody now everybody's looking at each other. I'm not supplying anymore. Why? Because now I need if there's a shortage of these things and I'm exporting them outward, what am I going to use for myself? No. I can't sell. I can't export this. I got to keep this. I got to hold on to this for a bit. And if everybody starts doing that, then then that's not looking too good now, right? Because there's certain raw materials and certain things that are traded that range from importance levels, right? You have things that are trivial, and then you have things that are luxury based, and you have things that are necessities. And we're hitting that point of necessities. When you start dealing with food, you're hitting points of necessities. That means that these devils they're squeezing and squeezing and squeezing, and eventually you're going to start to feel the squeeze in your everyday life. You have a food shortage, and on top of that, you have inflation. That is definitely not a good combination. It says here, food rationing because of shortages are symptoms of an emerging global food crisis. Rockefeller Foundation. When you how do you put this? When you're coming down with a cold, you start sneezing, your throat is sore, you start getting what they call that headaches or whatever, maybe a fever, right? Whatever you want to call it. These are symptoms. Sneezing, coughing, throat hurt. These are symptoms that tell you that there's a greater dis-ease within your body that you need to folk pay attention to, because people say I'm coming down with a cold. And how do you know that? Well, that's based on the symptoms that I'm showing. They're telling me that what's coming next is a cold. It might get worse. It might be a fever, whatever. So when they say that these food rationing are symptoms of an emerging global food crisis, they're telling you that you are seeing this. The only reason you're seeing these things is because there's something worse that's coming from it. These things are like a prelude to, or they're rolling down a red carpet for this global food crisis to emerge. And we're going to go into the scriptures and show that the scriptures prophesy or talk about a global food crisis. And unfortunately, for a lot of people in the Bible, when it talks about this global food crisis, which we are facing now, it doesn't say that it's going to happen and everybody's going to be all good. No, it says a lot of people are going to die from it. All right. Now, continuing, it says Rockefeller Foundation President Rajiv Shah was nice enough last week to give Bloomberg's division's David Weston a timeline on when this crisis could erupt. Shah believes in the next 6 months. All right. In the next 6 months, you could be looking at a global food crisis. A global food crisis in the next 6 months. Interestingly enough, Rockefeller Foundation, Rockefeller is a name that we know is well associated with these elites. All right. So, I mean, you could take it with a grain of salt, but, let's see how it goes, right? Because we know that these things that are going on, these are engineered. But who else would be at the top of the engineering of these things if not these elites? They're the ones who seek to benefit from it. So, in the next 6 months, interesting. So 2022, the Lord is definitely turning things up. All right. It says, as a reminder, the Rockefeller Foundation has views closely aligned with the World Economic Forum, advocating for a global reset. And what better way for a global reset than to bring in a reason? Why should the world accept this new way of the digital age and all? Because that is the world's escape from these crises. The crises of the old world can only be resolved by the resolutions of the NWO. That's the only way to save the planet. All right. That means that everybody on the planet has to play their part. Reduce your carbon footprint. You gotta comply with the new digital stuff. We gotta shift the economies onto a digital era, because the old way is causing inflation and the economies are dying, breaking down, and all this, that, and the third. And if you don't do it, then you're gonna die with the old world, and you're not gonna be a part of the new world. All right. A global reset. You can read more about that. And it says the reset they want is for the global food supply chain. And it's only out for the crisis they can implement. It says, and it's only out of the crisis they can implement change. There you go. Out of crisis, you can implement change. So wouldn't it make sense if you have the power to cause a crisis? Right? You want to drive your girlfriend to work, but she wants to drive herself to work. So you say, all right, in the middle of the night, I'm going to go and unscrew things inside her car so her car breaks down. So she has no option when she wakes up but to call me to drive her to work. And it might, it's a funny example, but you just think about the logic in there, right? I can't get what I want if I don't cause a problem in which the only solution is what I want. I want her to ask me to take her. I know she's not going to do that because she wants to drive herself. So if I take away that means, cause a problem where the only solution is, well, now she has to get to work. She damn sure ain't taking public transportation. So what is she going to do? She's going to do what I want from the beginning, which I've now caused. It's called problem, reaction, solution. All right. So it says here, such as no more red meat for the masses, but rather insects. Yeah, they're going to feed you some 3D printed meat. They're going to feed you bugs. They're going to, I mean, damn, this NWO it's not looking good at all, man. All right. But anyway, before ending, let me actually bring out this precept that I spoke about. This is the book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 16, verse 22. And it says, for many of them. Now, Esdras, the books of 1st and 2nd Esdras, as well as Ezra, were written by Ezra, all right, who was a prophet, a man of the Lord, a priest who the Lord gave these visions. So a part of what he saw concerning the last days, meaning the times that we are living in right now. All right. Concerning what he saw, he said, many of them that dwell upon the earth. This is the indicator. Whatever is about to happen is going to be a worldwide thing. So he saw a lot of people that are living on the earth shall perish of famine. The word perish means to die. So they're going to die of famine, meaning lack of access to food. And the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. So that means that there's going to need to be some real chaotic times we're in, to where even those that have access to food, their lives are going to be taken by way of, chaos, sword, actual sword, a gun, whatever. And when you read in the previous chapter in 2nd Esdras 15, about the 13th verse on down, it talks about how a man shall not have pity upon his neighbor, but shall invade one another, right, and destroy their houses with the sword, and take away, I think I'm merging some precepts here, but in 2nd Esdras 15, it tells you that they shall, in invading one another, they shall not regard their kings nor their princes, and a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their house with the sword, for the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So you may not die of starvation because you have food, but then you may die of somebody killing you for your food. And Ezra saw this worldwide. So he said what? For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine. So when you start hearing of a global food crisis that they're saying within the next 6 months, what should you think of? You should think of 2nd Esdras 16 and 22. Verse 23, and the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted and the cities shall be cast down. And that's a time of Jacob's trouble. All right. So, well, if you think that this thing is just going to go under the radar and you can keep living your regular life, you have another thing coming. All right. And the only way to escape this that is coming is by calling upon Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, turning to the Lord, all right, the Heavenly Father, who his true name is Yahweh, and his Son, who the world calls Jesus Christ, but his actual name is Yahweh Shai. Those are our only hope. All right, they are our only hope, because you will not survive this by yourself. All right, just FYI, in case you didn't know that. But anyway, I think I've said enough. I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Until next time, Shalom.